Hello everybody, Carlos here from the Frest team. This is basically a video for my designers to kind of like give you guys a little bit more of an idea of what the Whitebox process should be and kind of how you guys should go about it, how you should kind of like imagine it so we can basically make the whole pipeline a little bit smoother, right? First of all, what's the difference between a white box and a gray box? Basically, funnily enough, I'm pretty sure we have been using the wrong terms. Basically, what we've been making so far is the white box, which is basically the very initial basic layout of a level using simple shapes and no textures, right? Basically, it's a blueprint. It says the overall structure, while the gray box, which is what we're going to be moving into now, is a more refined version where basic textures are added to the shapes, right? Basically, what this allows us to do is have a more concrete visualization of the gameplay flow while still maintaining the flexibility for major changes, right? Um, Basically, what we're going to be doing is kind of like going into a microscope into our what we've called. I'm going to be keep calling them with the names that we've used, even though I'm pretty sure we're using them incorrectly now based on the AI overview of Google. We're going to be going back into our white boxes and basically being like, hey, what is this item? What is this object that Riley's going to be stepping on? What should it look like? What shape should it have generally? And basically going from there, right? A good example of kind of like a different of kind of like what one face looks like from compared to the gray box into the white box. This is a gray box. This is basically what we had right now, right? You can basically see that very basic shapes are used. You're just kind of like seeing what the major shapes that impact gameplay are gonna be. While when you move into the white box, you're gonna see that it's a lot more detailed, right? Like basically you can tell like, hey, this is a building that has a bunch of floors and has a rooftop section under it, right? This smaller building has only two floors. This one over here, this big tower, is kind of like just an uprise, and this wall in the back over here is basically kind of like an actual wall. It's not a building, correct? Obviously, this is professional. This is what we kind of like would like to strive for. This is a person that has 40 hours a week to work on something like this, so we obviously don't have to go into that level of detail. But this is just kind of to have an idea of professionally what we're kind of looking for, right? Another good example of this would be something like I'm pretty sure this is in on Warframe. I'm pretty sure it kind of looks like it, or a game similar to Warframe. You can see how the white box on it has things that go beyond just the shape of the map, right? You can obviously see this is a little bit more simple. While when you go into the staircase, it's a place that is definitely more detailed. You can see like the ridges on the staircase handle. You can see the little bars coming down. You can see things like, oh, different ridges going up in the columns, and even like some vines that are coming down. Obviously, this is going to be a joint effort between the art and design departments. For the first ones that we're going to be making, it's mainly you guys as design, just kind of being like, hey, this should be in here, this should be this kind of item, this should be this kind of item, and then art is going to be the 3D artists are going to be looking at it and they're going to be like, oh, I kind of understand this now. I'm basically not making just a platform. I'm making a boat. I'm making a piece of dirt. I'm making a uh, wall from a concrete building, right? Basically what we want to do is that we want to make it as easy as possible for artists to go ahead and kind of like adapt what you guys have made into the final level, right? Another great example of kind of like moving from gray boxing into the final product would be this would be something like kind of along the lines of what we're expecting, right? Maybe even this is a little bit too complicated, but basically you build out the shapes, right, that you want everything to be on. You kind of give a primitive idea of like, hey, when you look at it, this pretty much looks like some kind of building that has some kind of like second floor going up on top of it, right? And then the artist can come in and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. This is a big building that has a bunch of, this is a big shape that has a bunch of smaller rectangles. um, this is probably going to be something like a building, right? So they put a building down, they put a big entrance like you see over here, and then they put that second floor, correct? So that's kind of like the theory that I wanted to teach you guys, or kind of like basically talk to you guys about from the maybe if you guys had Speed, I know Jeremy, you had it. So kind of like I wanted to show you guys basically what we're expecting in terms of the principle, and to give you guys a little bit of more of a practical example, I can actually go into the engine over here, right? I mean, we can kind of see, I just did it with a very small section of the level, but for this in the World 3, you can pretty much tell that something like, for example, if I want to hide this right here, this seems like just on first look for a designer, this feels like it could be something like a boat, right? It feels like the player is going to be kind of like in water. There's different platforms over here, and then you see this kind of like boat thing. It's rounded, it has a line. Us as a designer, because we see the map, we can pretty much tell it's something like a boat. It's in the water. It's rounded. It has a little flag. It looks kind of like the mast of a ship that kind of came down into the water, right? So whenever the white box comes in, it's basic, or what we've been doing as our gray box is basically you put that shape down and you put that big stick down. I deleted it so you can't see it right now. So that will be where we're at right now, right? Now, what I'm expecting you to do in terms of like moving that into what we're calling the white box would be basically that second, more detailed step is I want you to basically make something that kind of um, is more representative of the final shape of the object. For example, this shape over here was just a cylinder, right? But what do we actually want that to look like? Do we want the boat to be rounded? Do we want the boat to be like more squarish? And that's where you guys come in, right? That's when you guys, for example, in my interpretation of this basic white box, I was just like, hey, this boat could probably work as like more like a triangular thing. So I made the boat with this is all in BSP, by the way, so we can have easier manipulation of things. I made the boat basically in this kind of shape. I put the ridges on it like the boat would have. I didn't leave any hole here because I didn't want to. Mind you, you can most definitely do that if you as you guys get more comfortable with BSP. And also, I thought about the back of it. I'd be like, oh, so there's probably going to be a ridge over here because it was broken, right? And maybe we put some kind of like thing that covers the background, maybe like a different piece of wood or something like that, right? I could probably even more be like even a little bit more detail onto this. And basically, what I could do is kind of like um, if I wanted to see over here. If I wanted to kind of like be a little bit more realistic, I'd be like, hey, I want to put a shape over here that kind of makes you feel like, oh, this part has been blocked by a I don't know like a straight piece of wood that got broken, right? And that's why over here this has this kind of like weird ridge going up of it, right? And then basically this would be communicated to the creative director and the lead designer, and then that could be further communicated into the artist, right? And then the artist can be like, oh, okay, so this is a boat. It had this part that broke off of it, and then that's where we go from there, right? And also, I'm also including some of the visual things that I want the artist to put in. For example, if you have the mast, you probably want a flag for the boat, right? So I put in the mast on top of here, taking into account kind of like that white box distance and stuff like that it should be. And I also put this flag because like that's kind of like what I want the actual flag to look like, right? I want it to be like this size. Obviously, it's very chunky for a flag, but I made this as a kind of like a practice thing. So take into account all of the different kind of like small things that you might think an artist would be like, hey, what is this, right? Because if you only see this up top, like if you only see this small circle, you're like, okay, that's a circle. That could be anything. But if you see something like this, okay, I can kind of see like it's supposed to be water on the bottom. This looks like some kind of like maybe some kind of like man construct. And then after you see this, oh, it's like a mast. Oh, this water mast, this shape like this, it looks like a boat, right? Um, and the other thing that I want to that I want to talk to you guys about, moreover than just kind of going over the basic like platform sort of level, is I also want you to make a very basic version of the background. Um, our artists are going to be the ones that are kind of be like going in and making putting a lot of creative forces into the background into making the different shapes good and basic being like hey this is a different kind of for example in this level like an iceberg or a beach and stuff like that. They're going to be the ones that are going to be putting in the detail, but what I want you guys to do is basically put that kind of like first step towards that, right? Obviously this shape is very primitive. There's not too much. I would probably expect a little bit more of detail from you guys. But what I want to make sure that I kind of like kind of talk about here is like, hey, these are icebergs, right? So this is what blocks the player's path to kind of like going over here, going up to this area, and kind of like get off the map. Or another way around, like, hey, if you want it to be a beach, you can just kind of like put some kind of plane on it, right? Or basically leave a bunch of this kind of like with the empty kind of like color coding that we're talking to the creative director sorry, that we're talking to the art lead about like hey like maybe like a blue floor is going to be water, just leave all this blue and then you make another plane, copy paste, and then you make another plane over here like hey this is going to be the beach, which the player cannot reach but it's always going to be kind of like in the background, right? That way our artist can be like oh okay so I get it, all this is water over here, all this is beach, and there's some icebergs on it, right? And then, for example, imagine that somebody like Emily's gonna be working on it. Emily's gonna come in and they're gonna be like, oh, okay, so this iceberg I want to make it like this tall, because it's gonna be like more visually interesting when the player's gonna be like right here, right? Or maybe I just want to like go a little bit downwards, like make it more muted, so when Riley's over here, she's not gonna be looking over here, right? Those are all the kind of things that are like kind of like the main principles that I want you guys to really be thinking about when you're kind of building out these white boxes, right? Be like, hey, how is somebody that has never seen this basic level layout, how are they going to be thinking about this, right? What am I trying to convey? What actual object am I trying to convey here? Um, and also another big thing that I want you guys to really be thinking about, it's like be wary of the negative space and the full shape of the things that you're making. For example, if the world floor, like for example, imagine the plane of the world is this, the map right here, right? And you want the platforms to be this high from here, don't make the platforms like don't make them go like all the way down like below the level. We've already had this happen once, like where, for example, we had a platform like this one in our first term, where like I'm pretty sure one of the platforms went like this far down. So when the artist gets this platform, they're like, oh, okay, I got to model like I got to model this whole thing, right? Compared to like just be like, oh yeah, I got to model this. If the player is only going to be looking at this, why are we making a shape so big that we got to model all this, right? That already cost like that. We already had this situation in the cave level where we would have, for example, like a cave entrance that would be like extremely like large or extremely like tall for no reason, and we can easily avoid it by you guys being basically aware of like, hey, where does the floor end? So I don't have to keep making, for example, all of this detail on the bottom. I could have easily just took out, right? And that would not have changed how it looks on the level. All these icebergs over here, like yeah, they have like maybe a little bit that's kind of like coming down, but even then, like this could even be shaved off more, right? Just because like that would also help you guys like basically whenever you put in everything into the level, or like the artists whenever they're putting it into the engine, just be like, oh, okay, I kind of get like how this platform, for example, should be situated, because I just got to make like this little bit, right? um so those are kind of like the main things that I wanted to hit on. Basically, I would like to see more detail. I would like to see basically the platforms that tell us more about what the object is, more over than like just a basic oval. I want you to tell me like, what is this oval supposed to be? Is this oval supposed to be a boat? Oh, okay. So make the ridges like it looks like a boat, right? And communicate that to the creative lead and to the producer, so we can communicate that to the artist as well, right? That's kind of like the main thing that I wanted to touch on. Just make sure to like, hey, more detail, more clarity, and yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, just feel free to ping me or Zach. And thank you guys. Just let's keep on fresting.